Hello everyone, it's Laura Brazil of Mind Over Muscle, and today we are continuing looking at underused muscles in our hips and upper legs, and looking specifically at the hamstrings. And these are underused parts, especially for when we walk. So we're looking at the hamstrings. Last week, you can go back and check it out. We talked about how to stretch out the hamstrings with awareness of our hip alignment. And so now we're going to build strength in our hamstring with that same awareness of our hip alignment. And as a reminder again, we're using our hamstring tendon lines to determine whether or not how close our hip is to a biomechanically neutral position. So our hip likes to live somewhere. Its current neutral position, I tend to call it when I work with students, but we're going to strengthen in your biomechanical neutral using those tendon lines. All right, let's get started. We're going to just do a simple straight leg hip hinge here, and when we're first pass through, we're not going to worry about neutral hip, biomechanical neutral hip. So if you would like to use a chair, you can. For this, just for a little bit of balance if you'd like, and we're going to go hips back and hips forward. So this is just for balance if you need it. And what I want you to notice here is that my hip joint is moving back behind my ankle joint. So for many of us, the tendency on a hip hinge, a straight leg hip hinge, is we'll actually bend the knees because our hamstrings are so tight. Another thing that I often see with this is that people will bend at the spine. So notice that my hip joint here isn't moving backward or isn't moving behind my ankle. So you can use a mirror or put yourself on a camera and video it to find out, but we want this hip joint to be moving back behind the ankle without letting the knee bend. And if you're really tight in your hamstring, this strengthening move may feel like a really big stretch in the back of the leg. So a couple more times here. All right, so now we're going to do that same straight leg hip hinge motion, but we're going to add in our biomechanically neutral hip alignment. So what is this going to look like? For most people, it's likely that your toes are not going to point straight ahead here. It's likely that your toes are going to point out. And for some people, majority of people, toes will turn out, but for some people, the toes might turn in. And we're going to use our knee pits here. So if you need a review of how to find the knee pits, go back to that foundational piece of the hip neutral. I'll link it. I'll put the link in the notes below. But you're trying to get your knee pit lines to point straight back behind you. So I'm going to do. If you notice here, if I just stand here like I normally do, my current neutral, my knee pits point out to the sides a little bit. You're finding those lines. But if I turn my feet out a little bit, let my hips externally rotate, my knee pit lines actually point straight back. And so now I'm going to do the same straight leg hip hinge with a more neutral hip joint. So I'm going to do the same thing, hip behind ankle. As you do this, if you change the alignment of your hip, which even if it's not perfect, you likely changed it in the process of letting your feet turn out or in or however you needed to get your knee pits back, you're probably going to feel a different stretch. There's a different quality to this hip hinge and the strength needed at the back of the leg than it is the first version when you just kind of went with what your hip joint wants to do naturally. And a couple more times here. And because this is all about walking, and I want you to build hamstring strength for your walking pattern, your gait pattern, we're going to do it on a single leg because every time we take a step and we walk, we're trying to push ourselves forward with the strength of the back of the leg and the hamstring, especially. So now what you're going to do is you're going to shift your weight onto one foot. This is where the chair really comes in handy. You're going to reach back with that hip. So now we've almost doubled the weight here that one hamstring or one set of hamstrings is using. And so you might find that this is a really heavy load for your hamstring. A lot of times we'll add weight to this, but most of the time just standing on one foot can make all the difference. I'm gonna go to the other side now. I'm gonna go head on to you so you can kind of see from the front view what this looks like and give you a little, not a cheat, but a little help that you can use. So I'm on my second foot, reaching back with my hip, getting that hip joint behind my ankle joint. And now, as I reach, I'm leaving my toe down. So I don't have to have my toe all the way up. This is a lot of strength here, but you can use the chair, you can put the toe down, and that should bring a lot of strength to your hamstring. Enjoy, and check out the previous videos in the notes below if you have questions about the previous stuff. All right, bye everyone.